20,000 units of products that could hurt someone, could hurt a child. That's an crazy amount of product. And that's just, we continue to believe it is the single largest risk to consumer safety that exists. No one really has their head around the scale of what we're talking about. Double fooling, right?
Exactly.
Consumer, and often fooling the retailer, because when it comes to children's safety, price really isn't the object. If I could get just 2 points in. One,
welcome to Why So Serious, business podcast about brands, how they made it, why do we like them, but also counterfeiting and how does it impact their business and what they do to protect us, the consumers. My name is Peter from Picker and I'll be your host with these exciting guests. Today we have Owen Caine from the Toy Association from States.
How's it going?
Toy Association, founded in 1916 and now have more than 900 members that account for more than $41 billion in revenue in the toy industry. Did I miss anything important there?
It is, as you said, an old association, but a well-established one. And in our area, it is really the only advocacy effort that happens for toys specifically. I think one of the things that people forget about the association is that we represent the entire supply chain. So while we are basically representing the manufacturers and the finished product, we also represent the retailers, we represent the suppliers, the inventors, which is a huge group of people that have a lot of stake in the end product, as you might imagine.
That actually leaps into product journey map. You basically do not represent any specific company, but it's more of a holistic industry approach from the production through the distribution and down to the consumption.
Primary focus, first and foremost, is product safety. Part of the way that we can ensure the safety of our products is knowing the entire supply chain, and we get benefits from representing it too. A toy goes through a huge process, and our job is to represent the process at each step. That primarily does have to do with safety, but it can also have to do with logistics work. It can have to do with donations having to do with our toy foundation. It can have to do with trade. Obviously, trade with China is a massive issue right now in the United States and the world. So we like to think of ourselves as a player in every part, but certainly the most important part of that is the safety of the product and the children using it.
Mm-hmm. You work a lot with members, but do you also work with the consumers and protect their interests?
Absolutely. So we do a lot of educational work, both on news broadcasts, especially as we're going into the holiday season, as you might imagine, which is not just our, but a lot of consumer products busy season. We'll do a lot of public education, as well as working with consumer rights groups like US PIRG and Consumer First. So that's one part of our job. Another part, which is what I am mainly responsible for, is the government affairs side, which is interacting with policymakers, other industries, other kind of political influencers and agencies to try to at least express the interests of the toy industry.
You, as the Vice President of Government Affairs and Public Policy, what do you do on a daily basis? Who are you meeting? Who are you talking to? How does your daily or weekly work life look like?
If I had to explain it in a simple term, basically what my job is to every week or every day, depending how busy it is, check in with the people I represent, which happen to all be focused around the toy industry, whether manufacturers or not, and ensure that their opinion about the best and safest way to get a product to a child, wherever they might be, is relayed to the people who make those decisions and those rules. So whether that's Congress, whether that's a governor, whether that's an agency that works for the president or the president themselves. And then we do that internationally too. So we do that all over the world with people who make the rules about what toys should be like. And my job is to go in and just make sure that those decision makers understand the perspective of the people who actually make and deliver the toys.
How did you ended up there? What led you to that position?
I would love to say that I can map it out really well. I think I got my start in politics and in government and in policy from a young age, which led me to campaigns, which led me to Capitol Hill, which then led me to trade associations, which are a very popular in the United States way for organizations to represent themselves or industries to represent themselves. But I don't know that I got here in any other way than I just happened to be working on consumer product issues for a different place. And the Toy Association thought that my views might be helpful in the processes they're going through. I tend to post a lot of the stuff the Toy Association is working on LinkedIn. So if you're ever curious about what the association's working on or what our priorities are, that's a great place to look. But please, anyone is able to reach out to me because we're always looking for people to work with, people to share ideas with in an effort to move common things forward.
You are posting quite a lot about the counterfeiting, and particularly the situation in Europe with toys is fairly, I would say, almost brutal. So the EU IPO report from 2024 accounts that the counterfeiting is about 8.7% of the trade in the European toy industry, corresponding to €1 billion loss. How is the situation, or what's the experience with counterfeits in the toy industry in the States?
The honest answer, and this is the most unfortunate part about the discussion, is that we really don't know because we don't have definitive answers. Definitive numbers, I should say. The whole system is bent on secrecy. I think the general ruling estimate right now is that 3% of global trade is illegal or counterfeit. We would suspect that number is significantly higher in the world of toys because our products are trendy, seasonal, and tend to be fairly visually simple to make. They are not simple to make as an actual functioning product, but as a counterfeit, they're pretty easy to make, look right. And so I use the stat that we had a report that came out in 2020 that said, based on the findings we had, 1 in 3 parents in 2020, before COVID, believed that counterfeits were not able to be sold online on e-commerce platforms. That is an incredibly troubling number, considering the fact that A, it's almost 5 years old, but B, we then went into 3 years of virtual lockdown, where quite honestly, people bought a lot of toys. And a lot of those were unfortunately counterfeit products. And the reason we don't have any hard numbers on these things, and this is my biggest plea to consumers out there, is that when you get a bad product, I'd prefer you didn't buy one in the first place, but when you get one, tell someone about it. We want to know. CPSC wants to know, the government wants to know, the e-commerce platform wants to know. It should be reported. And I think if more people got reporting it, we'd have a better, more accurate answer about how many counterfeits there actually are.
Mm-hmm. So you believe that the consumers can actually play a crucial role in improving the situation?
Absolutely. And so this is actually all back to the consumer. So this is our number one legislative issue at the Toy Association, is preventing and stopping, hopefully eventually, counterfeit products, because we continue to believe it is the single largest risk to consumer safety that exists across the board. The best way to stop that is for consumers just not to buy counterfeit products. And I know that sounds a lot easier to say than it is to do. But the first step in solving this problem is consumers taking a good look at what they're thinking about purchasing and hopefully analyzing the product that they're shown and the information about it well enough to at least see the red flags that it might be a counterfeit product. If they do buy it and they do get it, and this is a perfect example of what you're showing online, sometimes they look funny, like what you're seeing here, Woody is jacked, and they're clearly not right. And so the list you're showing will be objectively humorous, but they are examples of ways that you should immediately know that a product is obviously not right. Any parent out there that has a child that likes Avengers or likes Thomas the Tank Engine, to use that example, knows that's not accurate. That's just not an accurate representation. And so that's the kind of visual side of it. And as I said, that's the easiest way to counterfeit a product, is to make it look like something else. And so we wish more consumers would do this, would show us the pictures, would post the pictures, or would let organizations that they bought it from know that this is a problem. And I will just remind everyone that it is illegal in a brick and mortar store to sell a counterfeit or illegal product, consumer product. It is illegal by US law and in most countries. And so all we're really looking to do is try to make those same rules apply to e-commerce platforms, which is where a lot of, if not all, counterfeit, at least toys, come from.
Mm-hmm. What is the experience or at least subjective perception of counterfeits and the trends of people buying them? Because obviously these are ridiculous and they are obviously a counterfeit or maybe a copycat that is not impersonating well-known global manufacturers. Is there some trend in conscious buying of counterfeits and unknowingly buying counterfeits? Like what is the situation?
I don't know of any trend of people consciously buying counterfeits. I will say counterfeiters have gotten incredibly good, and the picture you're showing is an example of a huge seizure in Europe.
Yeah,
that was done. When those toys that he's holding, the officer there is holding, look quite a bit like normal toys. I mean, hard plastic toys are a perfect example. I mean, I can hold one up here. This is just like a little building block duck. If you saw this online, you'd have no way of knowing if this is made of the right materials, if it's going to come packaged, if the logo's associated with it. There is a logo on the one I am holding, but you'd have no way of knowing that from an online sale. So I think counterfeiters have gotten incredibly good at mimicking products. And again, I'll just remind people, we deal in a very trend-driven and seasonal-driven industry, where odds are the majority of products you're going to see this year for the holidays, you're not going to see new, at least next year for the holidays. And so counterfeiters get multiple bites at the apple, where they are able every couple of months to come up with a new idea or mimic something that someone else has done. So I think it's less that people want to buy counterfeits and more that counterfeiters are getting really good at making them believable. And of course, it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, the price is astronomically lower. We have seen an increase in counterfeit toy sales or reports, partially because the decision on how much am I able to spend. Mm-hmm. And toys that have to follow the 125 federal required tests before they're ever able to interact with a child, not to mention state reporting, international reporting and standard harmonization, and the manufacturing and transportation of it. Of course, the cost of a compliant toy is always going to be higher than the cost of a counterfeit toy. And so another really big thing for consumers to keep track of when they're making buying decisions is usually if it seems too good to be true in price, it is.
If you look at the troubling or the problematic toys, you have two major groups. One is obviously the substandard products like this that are not mimicking anything and are looking at it as a bad joke. And it's definitely one story that these substandard toys should not be sold in States, in Europe. It should not actually be sold probably anywhere. But then you have counterfeits, which are much more dangerous. Nobody in the supply chain can identify them as a real or not. And the consumer is expecting the performance as from the original, but usually the fakes are made from dangerous substances or materials. We see many other products like consumer goods, razors, iPhones, that are entering the legitimate supply chains and retail stores, and there is no way for the consumers to tell if it's real or not.
Yeah. No, and so you say it's just, and I agree, the counterfeiter, obviously the person who made it clearly knows, and actually the article that you have up is a perfect demonstration of this. This was a magnetic toy that was very, very popular. You could build all kinds of things with them. They came in a variety of shapes, both squares and triangles, and this is as simple as that is pretty much just hard plastic with magnets. And if the magnets are not put in right, are not up to standard, then you have a very serious chokeability problem for children. And this is the frustrating part, I think, about working for the association, is that there are standards for all these things. We've worked a really long time to develop standards with governments about how these things are supposed to function and ensure their safety. And so when you have, like these magnetic toy show, companies that are willing to basically mimic a product, but to substandards, it's double fooling, right? The consumer, and often fooling the retailer because they've seen something like this. It looks generally the same. There are definitely reports of people just saying they have qualified for all the tests and passed all those inspections so that they can be sold mainly on e-commerce platforms, but also in retail locations. We have tried as an industry and a trade association, most of the major retailers really in the world, but certainly in America, are all members of ours. And they're not members of ours because they sell or they make their own toys. They want to make sure they don't get in violation for selling the wrong thing. And so we have members, every major retailer in America you could imagine, and some that are surprising to even me, that attend every phone call, attend every meeting to ensure that nothing they're selling is in violation and could hurt someone. And so it is so important, number one, that consumers look for brand names and verify information about the products they're going to buy and give their children. But this is an example that, you're right, an average consumer would have no way of knowing the object in that person's hand is a counterfeit or not. They just would have no way visually of knowing it. And so it falls to the retailer, whoever is providing it to them, that can be contacted to ensure that they're receiving a safe product. And I think it's a very simple concept for most consumers that what they buy should be what it is, what they've agreed to buy. And the only people who can police that are the people selling it to them. That's it. That's the only one who knows what the product is and where it comes from.
As much as this is a very serious topic, the counterfeiting in the toy industry, because it can really be kind of health damaging and lethal. What was the funniest experience that you ever saw in the toy industry, or maybe not funny, but I would say ridiculous?
There are examples of products like the ones you showed before that are clearly wrong. And it is only by luck, honestly, that CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, or the Consumer Product Safety Commission are able to find a shipping container full of these that come into port. 20,000 units of products that could hurt someone, could hurt a child. That's an crazy amount of product. And that's just one that we happen to be able to find. And so I don't know that there aren't a lot of funny stories other than the, kind of funny looking knockoffs. The unfortunate part is that no one really has their head around the scale of what we're talking about. And occasionally, and unfortunately, we get access to either ports or storage units or even retail warehouses that have made a purchase that they realize were wrong in time to see the volume that we're talking about. Try as we might, the unfortunate reality is that we keep having to redo these things because the system in place requires that manufacturers alert the seller to counterfeit products, not the seller is supposed to just identify them on their own.
In States, if you would look locally, what are the myths about counterfeits between the manufacturers or the retailers?
I will say the biggest myth from an industry perspective is that this is a financial fight for me and my members. I am sure that my members lose some amount of money on counterfeit products to people buying counterfeit and illegal products. It's just logical that they would. We have no idea what that amount of money is. And honestly, I don't even have a number that I could give you because it's just not a point of conversation in our trade association. We do this and we care because we have so much faith in our products that they're safe that we don't want kids to get hurt. And from another myth is that we're not constantly trying to improve these products. We actually have a robust data collection program through the CPSC that alert both the government and our members if there is a problem with any toy, if it somehow injures or hurts a child, if it's used inappropriately, etc. All that data is basically useless if it's contaminated with reports from counterfeit toys that aren't labeled as counterfeit. So if you just say a toy hurt me into this data, then all of a sudden all of our data is no longer usable. And so this is a problem that only gets bigger over time as the gap between our safety standards and counterfeits continues to widen. The other myth that I will just, a little bit of frustration, but it's also a myth I'll share with you, is that it really shouldn't be me that's having this conversation with people. It should be the numerous consumer safety advocates, health advocates, children's advocates that we work with every day in states and in the federal government to help improve toy safety standard. I would think all those groups, all those dedicated parents, all those elected officials that say that they care about child safety and toy safety should be the ones having this discussion, because at the end of the day, they are products that I don't represent that have the ability to hurt people, that should just be removed. And so I think that's a frustrating part about it for me, because we often feel alone in the world of toys representing toy manufacturers because we're the only one. And this should be an issue that everyone is in agreement on.
So you believe that there shouldn't be just one stakeholder holding the hot potato?
Absolutely
but
not.
Everybody should and have the power actually to do something.
That's right. The best medicine for counterfeits, for the sickness of counterfeits, is sunlight and visibility. And I think the more information, the more times people report that something doesn't work the right way, and honestly, whether it's a counterfeit or not, they should be reporting it. But they should also be letting who they purchased from know. And there should be a system in place where if you buy something from someone on the promise that it is new and works a certain way, then they are responsible if it doesn't. That's true in every other part of our economy.
If you would have a superpower and could share a message to whoever would be the target stakeholder, what would be your 1 or 2 sentence about the counterfeiting?
The people who I want to receive my message are the consumers, because they're ultimately our bosses. Okay. They decide everything. I ultimately, if I could get just 2 points in, 1, take an extra second and look over what you're going to buy in totality as much as possible to ensure you're getting something that's safe. Price, when it comes to children's safety, price really isn't the object, right? It's about making sure a child is safe. That's number 1, first and foremost, across the board. That's what parents should be doing. Secondly, if parents are interested or consumers are interested in purchasing things online through marketplaces, they're welcome to do that. I would say that if they do get something that is wrong, they have to let people know.
Essentially, 1 is authenticate when you are purchasing, and 2nd, report if you have bad experience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are here. Not everyone may believe me, but we are 100% here to be partners in that endeavor. The Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, would be the leading regulatory agency for consumer products in the United States. They would be the ones in charge of safety standards, in charge of collecting any sort of hazard data that exists for any product. And then, of course, they're the ones that are in charge of enforcement as well. And recalls and things like that. So they're a good organization as parents just to be aware of in general and to check periodically. But they have a multitude of both emergency room data, but also entry data that can be done anonymously as well, if that's a concern. So I would highly encourage, if you encounter a bad product, let the CPSC know, let the retailer, whoever you bought it from, know. But 100%, you have my LinkedIn information. You can always let me know too.
So the Consumer Product Safety Commission, just to simplify this, they report an unsafe product.
There you go.
Perfect. So on the website here,
and you can report now. You can see the actual underlying regulations if you want to make sure you're right, or you can actually just search an individual product. And it sounds biased because I'm an industry representative, and so it probably is. But a lot of time and effort was spent by a lot of stakeholders to ensure that there was a process available to be able to prioritize safety of products. And this is what came out of it. So I highly encourage people to take advantage of it.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Owen, very much for your time.
No, of course. I'll make one more pitch to anyone out
Please.
there. We are very much pushing the shop safe piece of legislation in both the Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. This would require e-commerce platforms to retain liability over the products that move through their platform. We consider it essential. Any companies that are interested in that piece of legislation, please reach out to me. We're always looking for other supporters. And any consumers who really are interested in trying to stop the sale of counterfeit goods, please tell your elected officials or organizations you're a part of to be supporters of ShopSafe, the ShopSafe Act, which is in both the House and the Senate. And if it's not passed this year, I'm sure it will be. I'll make sure it's back next year. So just a shameless plug from a legislative standpoint.
Perfect. Thank you for that. It was very good to have you here, and definitely improved also my perspective of what are the roles of associations, industry associations, like how you guys actually can help and fight for a better world, for a world without counterfeits.
And I want to thank you, Peter, too, one, for reaching out to me, and also for running this podcast, because I think this issue is so important and it affects everyone, and it's only going to go away with more people bringing to light this issue. So thank you for running this podcast and for distributing the information.
So fingers crossed that this message gets out to many people.
Anything and everything I can do to be helpful to you or anyone else, just reach out. Always here to help.
So now let's look for another episode of Why So Serious.